Hi everybody and welcome to today's crowdfunding Introduction to Crowdfunder webinar. I'm just giving a few more moments just to see if we're going to get a few more people into the room before we get started proper. Some of you have found the chat box just on the right hand of the screen there. Do feel free to pop any questions into that chat box throughout the course of the session. We will be looping back around to that towards the end of the live session for a bit of a Q&A. So we have allowed an hour for this session. We'll go through some slides, we'll do some introduction to crowdfunding, look at the basics, what makes a really good project, those 3 steps to success. And we've also been joined today by the wonderful Gaynor, who has absolutely smashed her crowdfunding targets with the crowdfunder that she launched for the Sambia Bamba Youth Band. So we'll hear about her experience, the extra funding that she was able to access as well. Just a few kind of housekeeping points before we do get started. I'm actually working from the Crowdfunder head office at the moment. It's a lovely day down here in Cornwall, so the window is open. You may well hear some seagulls flying around and just general beachside noise because we're overlooking the beach here in Newquay. So please do bear with us for any unexpected interruptions. If you do find that there's any issues with your internet connection, then please do just press the refresh button just up there in the browser on your web page, and you should come straight back into the live room. It is a live session. We are, however, recording this session, and it will be sent round to everybody that has signed up, along with like a follow-up email with all those wonderful links, resources that we've spoken about today. So just to make it kind of clear to you guys and reassure you that yes, it's being recorded, but we can't see you. So you're not going to feature in the recording. It will be the slides and myself and Gaynor. Okay, so without further ado, those numbers have gone up quite nicely. So let's get started. I should just point out that we are going to shuffle around the order a little bit. We'll hear from Gaynor a little bit earlier in the session than we normally would do. But bear with me while I kind of format that on the fly. Before we get to that point, I want to tell you a little bit about crowdfunding. So Crowdfunder UK exists to tackle society's challenges and to make projects happen and make ideas happen. The idea of crowdfunding is to raise money from your network and your community in order to put your project or your idea in place and make it happen. So far to date, the Crowdfunder UK platform has helped raise over £250 million for projects that are crowdfunding via our site. People adding, projects adding are upwards to kind of 300 per day. So as you can imagine, there's lots and lots of scope for different crowdfunders. The website itself hosts a huge variety of different crowdfunding projects. Most things can be crowdfunded for. The idea is that we're connecting projects with people who care. So when you sign up to our crowdfunding site, you will select one of these categories that you will most likely fall into. But we do have people crowdfunding from anything through to personal causes, charity fundraisers, all the way through to political parties and startup businesses. Most things can be crowdfunded for. What we often recommend is that you have a look at the site and see what's come before you, and do a little bit of research as well as to see what has successfully crowdfunded. So Crowdfunder UK is a rewards-based crowdfunding site. That's how we differ from donation-only sites such as Just Giving and GoFundMe, for example. The idea of rewards is that you can actually offer a benefit of some kind in return for a financial contribution. So all those people in your community that are supporting your project, it's a way of giving something back to them by way of a thank you. That might be a service, for example, or a product, or just a general social media shout out. We will go through all of the kind of plus side of rewards a little bit further on in the session with some ideas as well as what you could be offering. There are many benefits to crowdfunding, not just the financial raise. Of course, that's primarily what people are crowdfunding for, but alongside that, there are added benefits which are not necessarily that well known about. So first and foremost, there's the validation that comes with crowdfunding. You're building confidence in your idea and you're putting it in front of people for feedback as well. You're seeing if there's an appetite for what you're doing. You're also creating awareness around your project. There might be a launch date of an event or a product, and you're creating a buzz around your idea and what you do. You're also getting noticed by a wider audience. part of the crowdfunding practice is to be able to build those networks and push your promotion to a wider audience. All of those people that are supporting you, members of the team here at Crowdfunder, different people that you tap into within your community and your networks, will become advocates on behalf of your project and behalf of your organisation or your idea. By engaging with that audience, you're really building those meaningful connections, and they will go on to talk about your project, talk about your achievements, and hopefully bring people and rally people around your cause or your idea. You'll also learn new skills. So by going through the motions of crowdfunding using our platform, there's lots of resources available to you to make sure that we get you crowdfunding like a pro. And these are all transferable skills, whether it be promotion, networking, marketing, creating engaging content, for example. And then finally, we have lots of extra funding and support on offer. So we do have all the resources available for you. We also partner up with over 70 extra funding partners, and that might be local authorities, that could well be organisations such as Sport England, for example, and then national pots of money, national funders such as the British Airways Community Fund. So there is the potential to tap into lots of additional extra funding to help support your projects to success as well. The way that it works is that you sign up to the crowdfunding platform, you start putting your page together. So you create a page to tell your audience the story behind the project. You add a range of rewards if you so wish. You go live with your project, so you launch it and you share that crowdfunding page with your network, and that money comes in and you raise your funds needed. Of course, like everything in life, the more you put into it, the more you will get out of it. So in its simplest forms, this is how it works. There are lots of different steps within that to help make sure that you do it successfully. But in its essence, you create a page, you add those rewards, you launch that page and you promote it, and those funds are raised. So what I think I'd like to do, just before we go into more detail of how to go about doing that and how to raise those funds and the different structures and things, what I would like to do is I'd like to bring Gaynor on. So let me just quickly pop through and find her relevant slide so we can talk to her. So bear with me just 1 second. Gaynor was part of our Creative Scotland Crowdmatch. So that is something that we actually run, or we were running earlier this year. It's a live Crowdmatch competition. So Gaynor had access to pot of money from Creative Scotland, and they were tasked, a group of projects were tasked with essentially racing towards milestones to receive pots of money from Creative Scotland. It was a really exciting time. A bit of a whirlwind, wasn't it, Gaynor, for you guys?
Just a little bit, yeah. But well worth it. So worth it.
You did incredibly well. I'm just getting there. Sorry, they're normally at the end of the section, so
no worries.
I was sorting that out earlier. But you also had access, didn't you, through the process? You applied for additional pots of money as well. So you were really fortunate, actually, weren't you, with your particular campaign?
Yeah, we didn't realise. So yeah, we came in through Creative Scotland's Crowdmatch, which was a really simple process to go about. So we knew we had those various milestones to hit. So it was very clear. But then we also got match funding from the National Emergencies Trust. So anytime people put in, say, a tenner, then National Emergencies Trust would match fund that up to a total of £250 per pledge. So that made it a huge difference for us. And then finally, so we ran the campaign for a month. In the final week, British Airways came on board as well and gave us £20,000, which was it was unbelievable. I mean, we set out thinking we'd maybe get about £5,000 in total from the crowdfunder, and we would have been happy with that. You know, that's like a month's running cost. That felt like an achievable target. But with, you know, all the match funding, we ended up with just short of £50,000. Well, close to that if you include the gift aid, so 10 times our original target. Totally unexpected, but it was really down to, you know, allocating a lot of time to it, putting staff time, resource into it. But the match funding and the mentoring through Crowdfunder as well is absolutely brilliant. You know, they do hold your hand and encourage you throughout the whole process, which is absolutely brilliant. Yeah, that was hugely beneficial for us.
We were all so excited to see it as well from our side of things, because we all get very invested in projects that come through the process, you know, especially if they've received match funding, because it's exciting and we know that it's going to really hopefully make exciting things happen for those projects. So just for those that are attending today, could you tell us a little bit about Sambia Bamba Youth Street Band? What is your organisation? What do you guys do?
So pretty much drums and brass. We've been in the go for 6 years. It's a street band, which means we play out in the streets as well as in venues. We've got about 40 young people and just people from a diverse range of backgrounds. The key thing for us is making it our project accessible, because lots of times when young folk are trying to get involved in music, there's quite a cost barrier. So we make sure everything's absolutely free to take part, and people learn music from complete beginners. They don't have to have previous music experience. And yeah, it's been a fantastic project, and thanks to the crowdfunder, we can now keep going for another year. So it's absolutely brilliant.
Amazing. That was going to be one of my questions, because obviously securing that extra funding, and I think in particular, I mean, you obviously entered the crowdfunding process through one avenue, which was through a competition essentially, which is something that we do, as I mentioned, run kind of occasionally, and this one in particular is with Creative Scotland. But I imagine that kind of securing that big chunk of money from British Airways Community Fund, I mean, what has that meant for you guys going forward? Is that, you know, you up and running now for the next year, not having to worry financially, or where is that for you guys?
It's allowed, it's essentially 10 months running costs, which is absolutely brilliant. You know, we were really successful during the pandemic. There was so much emergency funding on the go. So it was getting to, you know, to the stage where we were getting a bit concerned that was drying up, and, you know, would we be able to secure the additional funding? So that's taken the pressure off, and now we can just plan like a 3 to 5 year fundraising strategy, because we don't have to, you know, get money in immediately. So it's absolutely brilliant to be in that position.
And why did you decide to crowdfund? I imagine that, again, for you guys, it's quite unusual. Normally in these sessions, we have somebody who hasn't been part of that kind of competition process. But was it that kind of lure of that extra funding that you might be able to receive that made you crowdfund?
Crowdfunding wasn't really on my radar at all. But then we saw the advert from Creative Scotland, and the form to fill in was just a really short expression of interest form. I thought, why not? We've got absolutely nothing to lose. So yeah, it was because Creative Scotland were advertising it. It wasn't on our plan to be crowdfunding this year. So yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you. I was just thinking, you mentioned there about the form. Did you find on reflection as well with the extra funding forms through crowdfunding that it was quite a straightforward process? Because what we find is that our funding partners are looking at the project pages as much as they are. Obviously, they'll look at the application, but you're kind of collating all of that information that you want them to see on your page itself. So did you find that was quite straightforward as opposed to maybe grant funding applications and things? Yeah,
it was very, very simple. Yeah, the British Airways one as well. I think they were quite a new partner, weren't they?
Yes, they actually only launched within the last kind of few months. So you guys were one of the first projects supported, which is, again, really exciting. Yeah,
what I really liked about that was, I remember when we looked at the application form, and we met all the criteria apart from one, because we're a fairly new charity, and one of their criteria was to have your accounts published online, and we just weren't at that stage yet. So they accepted it. They changed their criteria just because we brought up that question. So very nearly didn't apply for it because of that line.
I'll tell you what, that really highlights as well. Like, we're really fortunate that so many of our funding partners are open to conversations. We find, especially within the sports world, we work with Sport England quite closely as well. And, you know, even if a project has been declined in the first instance, there is always room for a conversation about why has that happened? Is there any way that and not necessarily that the criteria might change, but that, you know, within sports projects, it might be that we love your project. We just want to see you demonstrate this within your page, for example. So never be put off, I guess, by being declined, or there's always a room for a conversation so you can understand exactly why, or if there's a way that you might get approval. So yeah, that's one piece of advice that I'd give to everyone applying for extra funding is think of it as the start of a conversation. It doesn't always have to be kind of a closed door if it's not a yes straight away. What did you find most difficult about crowdfunding, if anything? Time frame, maybe?
Slightly. We put our campaign together in a week. I think the other ones who were in our cohort had a month. But to be perfectly honest, a week was long enough. Yeah, there wasn't anything particularly difficult. I think just making sure you can allocate staff time to properly manage it. And if you don't have that resource within your team, hire somebody in to do it, because they're going to pay for themselves. But yeah, there was nothing particularly difficult. It's just a really exciting process to go through. It gets quite addictive though when you start seeing all these donations coming in. It does get you get quite hooked.
Yeah. What worked best then? What did you find was a highlight?
Just seeing the support from our network, which we didn't actually realise, how large our own network was. But then seeing that get match funded, it was, the whole thing was just great.
Oh, good. And I imagine, because obviously people supporting projects have the ability to leave comments, that is often quite a nice thing, that not only are you seeing the money coming in, you're seeing these lovely supportive comments from people that obviously follow you and what you do and want to see you succeed. And we found, that some projects have had people come out of the woodwork they've not spoken to in years and kind of written a little comment of support. And I think all of those things are quite lovely as well, aren't they, to take away from the process? Yeah,
it is lovely just to have that feedback from people who support you. Yeah, it's lovely.
And you had a really lovely selection of rewards as well. And it's something that we were speaking about, weren't we, quite early in the process. Like, how did you go about sourcing those in the end?
So what the rewards, we offered T-shirts to celebrate the 6th birthday of Zambia, of the youth band. And to be honest, the rewards bit I don't think worked as well for us as it could have. Maybe we didn't push them enough, I'm not sure. But that said, we didn't really need them with the other donations that we got. So yeah, for us, that wasn't a highlight. I have looked at other people who were in our cohort, and they seem to do a lot better with rewards. So I don't know, it was maybe we didn't pick the right thing or we didn't push them enough. But we certainly can't complain about the total. But if I was to do it again, I would think more carefully about the rewards and how to manage that, I think.
And I think as well, like you mentioned earlier, you guys came late into the cohort, didn't you? So that was quite often, it's a kind of thing that you do, hopefully, or if you can, put a little bit of legwork into, getting out there into the community and seeing who you can kind of collaborate with rewards and stuff like that. I love the ones that you had on there. I want a Zambia Bamba t-shirt, please.
Certainly send you one.
But you're right. I mean, these things, they can be quite hit and miss. And I think the key to it really is monitoring it, isn't it? And seeing if you've got the capacity, what's working, what's not. Can I add something else on? Is it assisting our fundraising? But having the option to do it, I think, can be really beneficial, and also can be a prerequisite as well for some of our extra funding partners. Just to bear in mind, again, going back to sports, for example, with our sport funding partners, they do require you to have a selection of rewards that are both inward facing, so from your club and then from your community as well. We kind of covered there the added benefits other than the financial raise. Other than those lovely supporter comments, did you find that you've taken any added benefits away from the crowdfunding process?
Added benefit would be confidence to do it again. It's maybe something we would do every few years. And also, I think just raising our profile quite a bit. The campaign got so many shares online. So I think just raising our profile. And lovely for the young folk, I think, to be able to see how many people support it and want it to keep going as well.
That must be lovely for them to be like, I'm part of that. That's what I appreciate the fact that you need to shoot off, don't you, pretty soon. So what takeaway piece of advice would you give, or a few pieces of advice that you would give to people thinking about crowdfunding? Don't mind what you say.
I would just go for it, and I would definitely go with Crowdfunder. One, because you get allocated a mentor, which is brilliant. You know, if you've never done it before, they give you lots of great advice. So just listen to all the advice that they give you, because they really know their stuff. And yeah, just go for it.
I guess you can't win it unless you're in it, can you? So I guess sign up, bite the bullet, make use of those wonderful resources, and I think preparation is a good shout. If people can work their way through like the Learn platform and stuff, I think you guys in particular are a bit of an exception to the rule, because I think that what you do and your kind of existing network put you in a really good place to kind of shout about it, which is brilliant. And the proof is in the pudding. Like, look how much you've raised. You know, you really did an incredible job, and almost kind of on the back foot, because you were live so quickly, and then you were kind of pushing and pushing and pushing. And I think for anybody that's thinking about doing it really early stages, is just come along to those drop-ins and those webinars and things as well, would you say, and just get all of the information you can. But yeah, sign up. Good shout. Yeah. Just sign up and do it. Yeah. Amazing. Well, Gaynor, thank you so much for joining us. Normally we'd bring you back for a Q&A at the end. It will just be me, sadly, because you've got to shoot off, haven't you? But
yeah.
what I think I'm going to do is play your video in a minute, so everybody gets a really good idea of what the project was all about. And I'll share the link in the chat box as well, so people can go and have a look. So it's still fundraising, isn't it? It's still currently live.
It is, yeah. Yeah.
People can donate if they so wish.
Great stuff. Thanks so much for inviting me along.
No worries. Thank you so much. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye. Amazing. So yeah, Gaynor's project was absolutely incredible. I am going to play you guys the video from her project, just to give you a really good feel of the band, like the young people that are involved as well. It's a really infectious kind of project. And then I will rejig those slides and we'll dive straight back into crowdfunding in just a moment.
Fundraising because everything about the youth band is completely free, and it allows people from all around Glasgow to come in for free. We pay for like travel, we pay for all the instruments and all the staff and everything, so they don't have to like spend any money whatsoever, and that allows people to come that would otherwise not have the chance to play music or get to do anything like this. So we want to keep that free. I've loved being in the band because it has given me so many opportunities. Before I came here, I never played any music before. Now a few years on, I've had so many amazing opportunities, like around the country, playing so many different instruments and meeting different musicians, playing different types of music, go to different workshops, and like outside of that, it's just developed so many skills for me. Like the confidence I have now in terms of just like life in general has increased so much since when I first started.
Musically, I'm able to play instruments that I would never have known about before, many people that I would never have known before. It's really crucial in like opening up avenues for people and connecting people. It brings in a lot of people from all over Glasgow who I wouldn't have usually met. Also, it gives people an opportunity to learn something they've maybe never even heard of before. Like, not many people play samba, drums, so it's really fun for people to learn something new.
I love it because it's changed my life. I was a completely different person when I joined the band. I was shy, didn't like talking to strangers, and now I like to think of myself as being quite sociable and confident. It's given me a passion that I never thought I'd have. It's encouraged me to pursue more creative endeavours in my life. It's amazing.
Okay, well, hopefully you guys enjoyed that. As I say, it's quite infectious. It makes me want to get up and dance, quite honestly. But yeah, really wonderful project, and so great that they've had as much support as they have throughout the whole of their crowdfunding process. Just jumping straight back into crowdfunding then. So we've talked about what Crowdfunder UK does, that it's a rewards-based platform. There are a few different ways in which you can set up and raise funds on Crowdfunder. So we give you the ability to either raise in an all or nothing format or a flexible funding format. All or nothing essentially means that if you do not hit your target, 100% of your target that you've put in place, you will receive nothing at all. So that sounds incredibly scary. And the idea that anybody would do that is probably a little bit kind of out there, but it works really well because it creates a sense of urgency with your crowd. They understand that if you do not hit your target, you're not going to receive any money, and therefore your project's not going to happen. And this can work really well if you are fundraising for capital costs, for example. If you have a piece of equipment maybe that you know costs, let's say £2,000, and you need to crowdfund for that. If you raise £1,000, you're not going to be able to buy that piece of equipment, and therefore the project isn't going to happen. So have a think about what structure you want to set up into. If you know that you can make use of any money raised, maybe you are putting on some wellbeing classes, and it won't take a huge amount of money to be able to run maybe a month's worth or 6 months worth, whatever it might be. Just the more money you raise, the bigger the project can become. Then I'd opt for flexible funding, which is keep what you raise. So everything that you raise from the crowd, you will keep. The only difficulty with that is if you have been accepted for extra funding, if you've been approved, I should say, for any of our extra funding pots of money, if you are set up as keep what you raise, you may find that you actually forego that extra funding if you do not hit 100% of your target. So just check those terms and conditions. You would be able to keep the money raised from your crowd, but in most cases, that additional extra funding money would be returned to the funding partner. Which leads nicely onto setting a target. So not only do you need to think about the structure of your crowdfunder, you need to think about setting a realistic target. So you want to be thinking about the size of your network, your audience. So your friends, your family, maybe your organizations, friends and family, team members. You want to think about how many people you can put your crowdfunder in front of that isn't necessarily your kind of wide audience. So you want to make sure that it's realistic. You also want to think about the minimum amount of money that you would need to make your plan happen. It's quite tempting to be quite overambitious with a crowdfunder. Really, you want something that looks like it's a surmountable kind of mountain to climb, so that your supporters, your crowd, can see that they can help you get you over that line. We do give you the ability to set something called a stretch target, which allows you to continue to fundraise beyond your initial target whilst your project is live. So let's go back to that piece of equipment. Let's say it's £2,000 to buy a run-of-the-mill piece of equipment that we need for the kitchen in our cafe, okay? Run-of-the-mill coffee machine, let's say £2,000. But actually, if we were to raise £5,000, not only could we buy that coffee machine, we could revamp the play area that we have in our cafe. So that £5,000 becomes your stretch target. You're hoping to raise 2 for the coffee machine. Anything beyond that goes towards that additional part of the project, and you're going to put it to use. So that becomes your overfund or your stretch target. Do bear in mind as well, when setting a target, that there are fees associated with using the Crowdfunder UK platform. We have platform fees in place for profit-making projects. For not-for-profits and charities, that's a 0% fee. What we refer to as platform fees is obviously hosting your project, all of those wonderful resources that you have access to as well. And then all of our projects on the platform are subject to transaction fees. We use a third-party payment provider called Stripe, and they have transaction fees associated with those transactions. So that is funneled onto the project. There may also be fees associated with any of those extra funding pots of money. So again, look at those T's and C's and the pledge criterias, but just make sure you're trying to absorb those fees when setting your target. If you plan to increase your target ever so slightly, maybe 5 to 7% in most cases, then you should be able to absorb those fees, so that when your crowdfunder closes, what you come away with is actually what you hoped to raise. You're not, slightly less because of those fees coming off. And any money raised from your crowd is normally paid into your nominated bank account within 7 working days of your crowdfunder closing. It can be slightly longer if it's if you've received extra funding, because they do come from slightly different pots. But in terms of money from your crowd, it's around 7 days. Extra funding can take a little bit longer, normally kind of around the 10-day mark. So what makes a good crowdfunding campaign? Before we dive into this section, I'm just going to have a little check into the chat box and see if any questions have cropped up in relation to what we've just been speaking about. Bear with me 1 second. We've got lots of hellos, which is lovely, lots of introductions to each other. Okay. Brilliant. We've got some people introducing themselves and their organisations, which is really, really lovely. Be clear on the section of how to manage the financial section of the fundraising, because the last time after I add my card and number, they didn't. Okay, I wonder whether it might be worth, Antonella, just to actually pop that question back in again. I'm not sure if that's a setup of your crowdfunder question or it's to do with donating to a page. But just to be clear that when you do set up a crowdfunding page, you will need to be verified as well. So within that, you would need to enter your like your banking details and a form of identification, just so we know who you are and that you are legitimate, and then that's setting up that nominated bank account as well. Just having a quick check through here. Okay, so there's a question for Gaynor. She has disappeared, but I did work closely with Gaynor for her project as she was part of that Crowdmatch. So how long did it take them to plan their crowdfund? It was a really short turnaround for these guys. So they came late into the cohort. So as she mentioned there, in terms of creating that page and kind of going live, it was a week. We recommend 4 weeks, which was actually the time frame for that cohort. So we always recommend 4 weeks of planning, or however long your crowdfunder is going to be. So 4 to 5 weeks is an ultimate time for a crowdfunder, and you want to put the same amount of time pretty much into the planning aspect. So that's working your way through those resources, and that's also you know, getting any content ahead of time, creating that page, and all those kind of things. So this is from Craig. Can your project be for multiple things? For example, sports charity hoping to raise funds for floodlights, bleachers, and bikes. Yes, so as I just mentioned about the stretch target, you might have one of those things as your main goal for raising money, and then the additional things would come into that stretch target element. So to overwhelm your crowd, but also to be quite kind of linear about what the thing is, what's the tangible thing that you're going to raise money for. So if you can avoid kind of umbrella projects, it's always good to have one thing that they can see that's going to make a difference. So for you guys, it might be that you're going to raise money for those floodlights. You can talk about the importance of being able to utilize the pitch throughout, you know, the darker months and all those kind of things. And then that stretch target is where you would raise money for the bleachers and the bikes, for example. But also have a look at our extra funding partners, see which parts of that project you might be eligible to apply for funding. You can open up those conversations with them as well by putting in an application, highlighting what you're raising the money for once you're in the process of setting up your page, for example, and then you'll be able to make the right call as to what should be the main focus. Okay. Right, so what does make a good crowdfunding campaign? Ultimately, it's striking the balance of your network, which is primary. You want to be able to get this in front of a lot of people to generate those funds, but you also need to be telling them an engaging story. You need to be resonating with them in order to generate their support and their want to donate money to your project. And also that team that are putting the project together. Who can you rally around you? How can you delegate different tasks and different jobs to make sure that everything is being looked after and that you're elevating the whole process and making sure that you're not getting too fatigued by it? But also that team are going to be able to tap into their own networks, offer feedback on the whole process, and as I say, take on a bit of a role as well. And why do people pledge to crowdfunders? Again, this is striking that balance between they believe in your idea. So more than likely your close friends and family, your team members are going to get behind your project because they believe in you and they believe in your idea. There's going to be another aspect of your crowd that wants the reward. So you're tapping into the incentivized kind of rewards for your community. So what can you offer to people that they maybe have been asking for, if it's a product, if it's a service? How can you collaborate with different business owners in order to have a really enticing reward offer that taps into those members of the community that would like the reward and actually want to spend their money doing something good? So putting something back into the community via your project. And it's that kind of juggling act between the two. Striking that balance is key. So we have 3 steps to success here at Crowdfunder: planning your project, creating your project, and then running your project. We have a Learn platform, which I'll share the link to in just a moment. And then we will also, I'll put it in the follow-up email. The next step for you guys would be to sign up to that Learn platform if you haven't already. Okay, I'll just show you a little snapshot of it here. It's really user-friendly. There are 4 separate modules. So there's an introduction to crowdfunding, how it works, what it's all about, and then you've got the planning, creating, and running sections as well. There's a selection of videos, different information and articles, questions to make sure that by the time you finish that Learn platform, you have all the skills necessary to put a really engaging campaign in place. It's something you can dip in and out of. You sign up for free. If you've already signed up to the crowdfunding platform, it is a slightly different login that you'll be asked to create. Other than that, you can come back into it whenever you see fit, but it's a really, really useful tool to get you all having the confidence to start crowdfunding. The next place to look, which is always really useful, is to see what other people have done before you. So on our main crowdfunding website, just along the top, you'll see these 4 tabs. If you click the Explore tab, it will take you onto this page. And here you can type in any keywords. You can search by location. You can search by a category. So that might be food and drink, for example, if you're within the kind of hospitality sector. But my advice would be to search for successful projects. So use the filter to search for successful projects. And you'll be able to see project pages. You'll be able to take a look at their formatting, what resonates with you. Is it highly visual? Is it engaging? Do they have a lovely selection of rewards? What makes you want to support that project as a member of the crowd or the audience? Take inspiration. You don't have to reinvent the wheel, but use bits of that and put it onto your page. See what works well for you and replicate that. One key tool that is part of the Learn platform, and something that I recommend that everybody creates kind of as soon as possible when it comes to their crowdfunding journey, is their network map. Now, this is something that project owners will refer back to throughout the whole process of crowdfunding, through the planning and also the live part of the crowdfunding process. You can get loads of Post-its, write them on the wall, stick them all there. You can get an Excel spreadsheet, huge piece of paper, whatever works well for you. But what you want to do is make sure you have names and contacts, potential contacts for all of these different areas within your network. So you'll be looking at your friends and family, which will be your core network, along with any team members, for example, and their friends and family. You'll be looking at existing supporters. So that might be service users, that might be people who are currently on a mailing list for your organisation. You'll be looking at partners, and that might be, for example, suppliers. If you are in business, it could be collaborative organisations. If you work within the third sector, for example, it could be venues. Maybe you're a performer, and those partners might be, venues that you've performed at. Tap into all of those networks as well. Obviously, then you've got Facebook and social media, which could be a really brilliant tool, and we'll look at that in a little bit more detail. Your local businesses, so get out there on the high street, speak to people, pop in, when you normally have your coffee, go and speak to the people behind the counter, let them know what you're doing. Is there a way that they can help promote your crowdfunder, or maybe even offer a reward, even, if it's not a donation? So think about different ways that people can support you. Local people, maybe there's networking events or events going on within your community that you can be present at. And then finally, press and blogs as well. Quite often, local media outlets really love a kind of a community interest angle when it comes to their stories, whether that be via radio or local press. So do try and tap into those quite early on in the process, and we'll come back when to actually action that rolling out as promotion a little bit later. But do have those conversations ahead of time. So as I mentioned, in terms of going back to that coffee shop example, everybody could help. So project owners really need to be mindful that when they're having these conversations about crowdfunding and their project, that everybody can help in kind of one of these three ways. In an ideal world, it would be all three from everybody, but that's not particularly realistic. So if you can secure one of these from everybody you speak to, you're on the right track. So that's going to be sharing the project, so sharing it with their communities, their networks, and their crowd. Offer a reward. So in the instance of that coffee shop, they might decide to put something out on their social media or a poster in their window, and they're going to support you with a 10% off card for 10 of your supporters. So whoever donates X amount of money is going to receive this 10% off at the local coffee shop discount card, for example. And to make a pledge as well, because ultimately you're trying to raise those financial contributions. I mentioned about Facebook being a brilliant tool for finding audiences or building your network. So simply, when you're logged into your Facebook page, if you type in keywords into the search bar and search for groups, you should see a list of Facebook groups within your kind of locality and even further afield that have that are talking about similar things that you're doing. Or let's say you are setting up a yoga classes for children, you might put in your keywords there and you'll see if anybody else is doing something similar. If people are asking if there are any of these classes around, for example, on all of those local Facebook groups, see if you can tap into those networks by actually then sharing your crowdfunder within those Facebook groups and those communities. It might be worth popping a quick message to the admin of those Facebook groups, but it's a great way to broaden your network and your audience within like-minded groups. So people that are already on the same kind of wavelength that are thinking about similar things to you. Again, with this, you can search via Google. Or any search engine, and then look for news stories. So this will bring up any press, any blogs, anybody that's writing about something that has resonance with what you're doing as well. And again, contact them ahead of time. If it's a blogger, could they write a little blog post about your crowdfunder, why it's important, what's coming, creating that buzz again about the project, and local press as well. So when you're making that page, it's really important to make it as engaging as possible. We give you the option to actually edit your project URL. We call it your project slug. So this is the link that appears for your project. So that's what you're going to be sharing with your audience to actually direct them onto your project page. So what you want to make sure is that this little section at the end, which you can edit, is something which is really, really relevant to your project and is nice and short and sharp and snappy, because as you can appreciate at the moment, if you are sent a link which appears to be just a lot of code, a lot of numbers, a lot of letters, we do live in an age right now where obviously scamming is quite a big thing. So if your project link clearly shows that it is legitimately linked to your project, i.e. you've edited it and it says, you can see here, this project is Forget Me Not Newquay's Eco Florist, and then the project slug, Forget Me Not Newquay's Eco Florist. It ties in, it's legitimate, people are more likely to click on it, and as opposed to be wary of it, that it might be a scam link or something that they're not too sure of what they've been sent. So always edit that, keep it nice and short and sharp and snappy. And in terms of the project page layout itself, I just thought a great way of showing you is to just actually look at an example. So this is Amity Brew Co. They, again, really successful crowdfunder. You can see here on their page their fundraising progress bar. So the blue part is their initial target, and you can see just above there, the £30,000 was their initial target. And now the orange bar, they've actually gone above and beyond that, and they're into their stretch target, which you can see they've actually closed now, but at this point was £37,000. So they are overfunding. So the orange progress bar is when a stretch target has been put in place because you've reached your initial target. In terms of content on the page, make it as engaging as possible. Make it highly visual where you can. Use headings and subheadings. Pick out any key information in bold. The idea is that you are drawing your reader's eye throughout the whole of the page. You want them to absorb all of that information that you're trying to convey to them, but almost in kind of bite-sized sections so that they are not feeling overwhelmed by a huge body of text. Again, we live in a world at the moment which is very fast-paced. If you think about how you engage with social media, you're more likely to watch a short video that pops up on your, your Facebook or TikTok, whatever it might be, versus reading a huge paragraph of text without any images. So think about how you resonate with things, how you engage with things. And we here know that what works best is something that is headers, bite-sized piece of information, answering what that header is. So who are we? What do we do? Those kind of things. And then all of those wonderful pictures. Try and have people in those pictures. If you're working within the community and people are happy that, that have benefited from your project, or who will benefit from your project, if they're happy to be in those pictures, all the better. If your project is at a certain location, which needs revamping, for example, take pictures on location, make it as relevant as you can. And then there is that ability to add a video, like we watched the Samba Ubamba video earlier. That's a really great way of hooking in your audience straight away. Quite often we see that projects with videos are statistically more successful, because what you're able to do is convey all of that information about who you are, why you're crowdfunding, what you're crowdfunding for, and how people can help you within 1 to 2 minutes. So if people are clicking on your page, they're short of time, they may watch that video and make up their mind whether to support you or not at that point. If they want any more information, they will navigate the rest of your page. So it's always worth thinking about it if it's something within your capacity. It's not a prerequisite, you don't have to, but we do find it works really, really well. And then of course, those donations and rewards that we spoke about. So every project can receive donations on Crowdfunder, but we do give you the ability to add those rewards as well. So we've grouped them into kind of 4 key areas, really. So you've got products and services, experiences and events, corporate and sponsorship, and those thank yous. And what we recommend is that they vary in price points. The idea is that you are trying to create various price points on your page to direct those people donating to possibly actually give a little bit more money. If they're thinking of giving £10, but you've got a great reward at 15, for example, chances are they'll pop that extra £5 in and they'll go for the £15 reward. So think about the lower end of the pricing scale as things like your thank yous. Could be a social media shout out. It could be listing on your website. It could almost be a wall of thanks as well on location of where your project is happening. Or maybe you're crowdfunding for a film and it's going to be in the credits, for example. The other end of the scale is that corporate and sponsorship. So tapping into your local business community. Again, works really well for sports, for example, that you might have areas of the project or area of the sports facilities that actually could be branded with some corporate sponsorship. But also think about things like sponsoring a particular part of the project, sponsoring a particular piece of equipment. Or there was a lovely project where they were working with lots of volunteers and it was actually sponsoring a volunteer pack. So that was things like their high-vis that they would need, the tools that they would need to do their job whilst volunteering, obviously come at a cost. So you could actually sponsor a volunteer pack, or you could sponsor a coffee at the end of the week. So you could actually buy a volunteer a coffee, for example. A really nice way of people doing something lovely and feeling like what they have contributed to has some kind of tangible outcome as well. The experiences and events work really, really well. So if you can host a launch event, brilliant. If you could host a closing event for the end of your crowdfunder and sell tickets to it through your crowdfunding project while it's live, that would be a brilliant idea. Think about, with experiences, think about things that you might already offer. But how do you go above and beyond that? How do you make that extra special? Is there a way that you could do an exclusive service, for example, or is there a way that while the crowdfunder is live, that's done at a discount? In terms of experiences as well, tap into your local community. Can you speak to the local yoga studio? Can they offer some free sessions? Would the person, the local hairdresser offer a discount? It's all those kind of things as well. But experiences, if you can offer something where people feel really super special and maybe there's limited numbers, that works really, really well. And then products and services, great if you're a startup, if you have products yourself to offer, so brilliant for business growth or startups. Again, if you are a not-for-profit, but you are offering services, for example, can you do that at a discount? Can you put on special services? And can you tap into your local community as well? One thing that's really exciting at the moment is that we've partnered up with Stava. So we actually allow crowdfunding projects, if they so wish, to become something we call a multiplier. So you're multiplying your fundraising efforts by giving people the ability to fundraise on your behalf. Okay, so this is super exciting that we've now partnered with Stava. And if you are set up in such a way that people can actually fundraise on behalf of your project or your organisation, your charity, then they can set up their own fundraising pages, and now they can link their Strava, and you can set wonderful challenges to people fundraising for you and actually see their progress. So they can download all of those kind of milestones hit through their Strava app onto their page, and you can really kind of get some competition in place if you so wish. It's a great angle to go down for people fundraising for you. So running your project, this is the kind of last stage of the crowdfunding kind of talk through, really. And by the point you get to running your projects, you really need to be in a great position where you're being reactive, but it's not a knee-jerk reaction. You want to be planned and you want to have a structure in place, but you want to make sure that you can be reactive along the way, because what you think might work actually might not be the most effective way. So being able to tweak things and move things around throughout the course of running the project is definitely something to bear in mind also. So you want to make sure you're launch ready. So have a launch date in place, get a go live date in place, and stick to it as best you can. Deadlines work really well to make sure that you're getting everything together. It's a tendency to kind of push a launch date, but I would say get a realistic launch date in place and really do try and stick to it. Review your marketing plan, make sure that you've got activity in place for the live crowdfunder and also for the warm-up. Make sure you're engaging with people ahead of time. Try and queue up the first 20 pledges as well. So what you're going to do is you're going to launch a crowdfunder, and you're not really going to shout about it just yet. You're going to bring in pledges from your friends and your family, your core network, so that when you shout about it to your wider audience, you're already looking successful. You've already got pledges on that page. You could even throw a launch event in order to do that. You might want to do that past that point. So you're looking successful, you have a launch event, you push it out even wider, and you're looking super successful. And then you're going to promote through all those mediums that are available to you and engage with your project dashboard, which we'll look at in a moment. There's a bit of a U shape to a crowdfunder. So the first week of a live crowdfunder is normally where about half the money is raised. Generally, half the total can be raised in that first week. People are really excited about you launching. You've done your legwork, you've warmed up your crowd, you've secured those initial pledges. You might have even secured some additional funding, some extra funding approvals for you to shout about. You may well have hit those milestones required for those extra funding pots of money to drop onto your page. And so therefore, everybody is excited about seeing you being successful and they pledge on your project. The message gets a little bit diluted over a couple of weeks in the middle, where people have they might have donated already and moved on. You might find there's a bit of a dip. Okay, so traditionally there's a peak of interest at the beginning and at the end, and in the middle there's that lull. So we always recommend that you have a solid marketing plan in place so you can actually tackle that lull and keep that momentum going, which is why having a relatively short campaign, 4 to 5 weeks is optimum, is a great idea, because keeping that momentum going for that course of time, you might find it's quite tiring. It takes a lot of energy to be able to keep kind of geeing up your crowd, pushing it wider, getting it to bigger audiences to combat that lull in the middle. But it is natural, so try not to be put off if it does happen. Be mindful of your crowdfunding calendar. So that first week, you're going to be reaching out to your team, your friends and family to secure those initial pledges before going out to your wider audience, which initially will be any existing supporters, so people you can pick up the phone to or write a personal message to, for example. Partners, as I mentioned, that could be suppliers through to venue owners, for example. And then once you've secured pledges from those and sharing and all of those wonderful things, look at pushing it out via Facebook to your local community, local businesses, and then finally press and blogs. You don't really want the press or local radio to shout about what you're doing with your crowdfunder until you're in a really solid position with your financial raise. You're going to look more successful, more credible. You're also going to look like there's only a short way to go to get you over the finish line. And that's when your wider community and your wider audience can really come into play, because they don't have that personal investment in seeing the success of your project, but they do love the thought of the idea. They live within your local community. They don't necessarily have links with your organisation, but they want to see it happen, and they can see it happen because you're in a really solid position. So if we have a look at these communication channels, pick up the phone to people you'd normally speak to, WhatsApp them, Facebook message them, be as personal as you can, because as we saw in the beginning, people will want to get behind the project and see it happen. They want to get behind you as a project owner and your team or your organisation. So be as personal as you can. Blanket emails are a bit of a no-no, because people tune off from that. You know, people can see that it's not personalised in any way. So where you can, contact people personally, get contact names from organisations that you're approaching, for example. So initially you're going to be reaching out by phone, by WhatsApp, by, you know, as I mentioned, Facebook Messenger, all those kind of things, and word of mouth as well. When you're around 20% raised, you're going to be looking at pushing it out through your email networks. So that's people you don't have so much of a personal connection with. Beyond that, at around 40% raised, you're going to be thinking about your social media networks. So that's your slightly wider audience. But also don't neglect those older styles of marketing. So as I mentioned, word of mouth or print even. You do have access to a QR code as part of your live crowdfunder. So you could always get some flyers or some posters printed and put them up around your local town or networking events. And then events themselves. So a launch party would be brilliant. If you are able to host a closing party, or if you've got a future event coming up, is there a way that you can maximize that within your crowdfunder? So can you sell tickets? If it's a free event, is there a way of being able to put a package together that people can access at the free event for a donation on the crowdfunder? So think about your upcoming events as well as the things that you can do within the live crowdfunder. And then press, as we mentioned, really you want to be having the press drop something about your project when you're around kind of 50 to 60% raised. So, you know, over halfway, well on your way to being successful, that's when you're pushing it out to people who are kind of beyond your reach. So that's the press and the media angle. You do have access as well to a project dashboard. This is where you can look at all of the analytics for your live projects. You can see here on the right that you can see how much money the project has raised, what you're trending towards based on the current activity. You can also see day by day how many people have been traveling to the page and what donations are coming in. So you can use that to track against any promotion that you might be doing. If you've done a brilliant event over the weekend and you've been really engaging with the community and kind of talking about your crowdfunder and selling it and directing people to your page, you may well see on the Monday or the Tuesday that those pledges have spiked. So see what works well using that tool. And then you can manage every aspect of your project. So you can decide to extend your deadline. You can download supporter details, which is a GDPR regulated supporter list if you need to be able to contact them ahead of time or sort rewards being able to be delivered to them, for example. You can also edit aspects of your project. So once you are live, you can still go back into your project and add in any images you wish to. You can add rewards. We always recommend drip feeding information and rewards onto the page throughout the course of the live crowdfunder, especially things like updates. We give you the ability to update with your supporters, and it shows under a tab on your page as well. This is a great way to keep your supporters in the loop, as well as people reading your page. What have you been up to outside of the crowdfunder? What milestones are you hitting with fundraising? Keep engaged with all those people that are supporting you, and you will kind of reap the rewards of that, because they'll feel as if they're part of the journey and they'll go on to be those advocates for you and bring more people to the page. Just wanted to quickly highlight, kind of in the way here, that crowdfunding with charities, we have our own kind of section of the team here that works specifically with charities. You can actually set up a crowdfunding profile on Crowdfunder, and that will stay on our page, like Macmillan have here. So they have a charity profile page, and as you can see, they've raised just over £22,000. People can donate directly to that page, or as I mentioned, they can set up their own fundraising pages. So on the right here, you can see just a snapshot of some of the fundraisers which have been set live in order to fundraise for Macmillan. Now that we have that Stava partnership in place, it might be that Macmillan are actually launching a particular challenge. It might be Walker, 10,000 steps a day for the all of August, for example. So all those fundraisers who might be taking part in that will set up their own fundraisers for that particular challenge. They can link up their Stravas, and they can really pit themselves against each other if that's what they would like to do, in order to show just how well they're doing with those challenges that have been set. So it's a really exciting opportunity with that partnership. You can see there on the right as well about the Nectar Donate. So we've also, I'll just quickly highlight some of the benefits as well for those charity profiles. So we accept Nectar points on donations. So when people are donating to a charity, registered charity that has been approved via the crowdfunding site to receive Nectar points, people can actually spend their Nectar points as a donation to a charity, which is great news. You also have the access to extra funding. You can have people that are fundraising on your behalf. There's loads of really exciting opportunities for having your charity hosted on the crowdfunding website. And just here we can see about the Nectar Donate partnership. So your charity would feature on the Nectar app. So customers that are using Nectar through Sainsbury's, obviously, will then scroll through, find your charity, and they can actually donate straight to you with their Nectar points, as well as monetary donations if they so wish. So extra funding, I'm conscious of time. Thank you for sticking with me, guys. We're running over a little bit. We've had a bit of a rejiggle though, so hopefully we will be able to fit it all in within the next kind of 10 minutes or so. As I mentioned, we have over 70 extra funding partners. Okay, so we've got over £10 million in match funding that is available to eligible projects. It's something that we always recommend people apply for if they have been matched through our computer system, through our website system, and they think they are a good fit, and they obviously fit that eligibility criteria. There is no upper limit as to how many different pots of money you can receive from different funding partners. It may well open up conversations about initial targets, because you do need to go through the crowdfunding process. It's match funding as opposed to fully funded. So you would still be responsible for raising a portion of your target from your crowd. But there's nothing to say you can receive multiple pots of money towards that from our funders. So in Gayna's case, she had money from the Creative Scotland Crowdmatch, which is how she entered the crowdfunding process. She also had a live match fund from the National Emergencies Trust. So that is matching in real time donations up to the value of £250 onto the project. And then she also received a huge pledge from the British Airways Community Fund as well. I will share details of how to access that extra funding in the follow-up email, but it's definitely worth looking at how your project might fit those criteria for our partners. In order for you to be eligible to be matched, you would need to tick this particular box when setting up your crowdfunding page to allow us to share your project information with our funding partners. And that is the information that you're putting on your page, essentially. So all of that's set up. You want to let Crowdfunder know who's likely to benefit from your project. So which members of the community will you be working with, or who will benefit? And then also just further down in this section is the potential outcomes as well. So that might be increasing employment, it might be tackling kind of ill mental health, it might be well-being, or bringing people back to sport, for example, improving physical activity. So have a little look at the potential outcomes is always good. We are on hand to support you every step of the way. So we have webinars such as this. I did notice we've got a few people here from sports clubs. We have a sports-specific webinar. You can book onto it via Eventbrite, just as you have done today. And with those webinars, we look specifically how to crowdfund effectively for sports clubs. We know what works really well, especially in order to access that extra funding from our Sports England partners. They will be there as well, so you can ask questions to the funding partner themselves. And just like we have done today, we'll hear from a sports project owner as well that's managed to go through the process successfully. We have a weekly drop-in. Again, you can book via Eventbrite. You can come along. It's online, but it is live. You can ask a member of the crowdfunding team any questions that you have about the process or your particular project. We have the online learning hub and guides. So I mentioned the learning platform, and there's loads of different guides as well to help you through every step of the way. Our knowledge hub, which is a relatively new resource tool, which is full of brilliant articles and hints and tips for every single stage of crowdfunding. You will receive tailored email advice as well, pointing you in the right direction throughout setting up your crowdfunder. We have got a wonderful customer support team. They are a very small but very, very dedicated team down here in Newquay and Cornwall. One thing I would say is we have an incredible help centre full of lots of FAQs and troubleshooting guides. So I would always recommend checking the help centre first. If you are still at a loss and you can't kind of find the answer to it there, then reach out to customer support. And then we have that live project dashboard as well. Within the Knowledge Hub, on that page of the website, you have these prompts towards the bottom as well to take you straight to the live online sessions booking. So you'll see all of the Eventbrite dates that are coming up in the future. Take you straight to the extra funding page if you want to look at what's available, and that help centre that I just mentioned as well. We've already spoken to gainers, so we'll pop through this part and then just open up the floor to any questions. I'll have a look in the chat box and see if we've had any coming through. Okay, so messaging from Chris, should the target include the match funding element? Yes, in essence. So if you're approved for match funding, it's going to be based on your target, okay? So let's say you're a sports club, just because that's an easy one, and you want to raise £10,000 to improve your offering at your club. You've been hit by COVID, you've not had money coming in for the last few years, your member numbers have gone down, you really want to be able to tap into your local community and bring people back to your specific sport. You might want to actually enhance your offering when it comes to the junior section or, you know, women's section. So you've been approved for the Sport England Active Together Fund. It will be based on your initial target. So if you want to raise £10,000, they've agreed to match 50% of that target, which is £5,000. So now you are tasked with raising the additional 5 to be able to hit that £10,000 target. I hope that makes sense. So they're all match funds up to your initial target. So yes, they do need to have that element of match funding accounted for when you're thinking about your target. Obviously, there is no guarantee until you put in that application and you're approved as to what you may receive in terms of that extra funding. So I would recommend putting in those applications when you're in that temp stage, when you've created your project page, you're happy with how it's looking, you've got your ideal target in place. That's when ideally you want to apply for those extra funds, because that may well open up a discussion about things that you may need to add onto that page to really highlight why you're eligible. It may also open up conversations about a target, you know, whether actually Sport England have decided that they're going to match fund 30%, so they match fund between 30 and 50%. Is it realistic for you to actually reach the target that you have in place? Or maybe you haven't received those approvals. It gives you a chance to have a real think and maybe readdress, if needs be, that target if you need to before going live, because that's the one thing you can't really do once your project is live. Most things you can edit. Your target does really need to be set in stone when you launch. So put those applications in ahead of time. It'll open up those discussions, and then all those things can be ironed out before you go live. But yes, that was the long answer. The short answer is your target, it will be based upon your initial target, any approval that you receive. Okay. Question from Rebecca. Our charity has just been approved by the BA Community Fund. That's exciting news for you. Well done. I'd like to speak to somebody about this, as I don't feel that clear on it. Okay. So the best thing to do, I would say, is come along to our drop-in on Tuesday. Book via the Eventbrite link. It will be myself. I will speak to the BA funding partner ahead of time, and I will come armed with hopefully lots of information for you for your queries. The drop-ins are always a really great way to kind of glean information about different funds and also hear from different projects as well. So that would be my advice to you. If you can make it on Tuesday, they are every week, 10 a.m. Alternatively, if you do want to drop me just to admin your email address, I'll see if I can field it to the right people for you. Okay, question from Annie. Can you apply for crowdfunding if you aren't a registered organisation? Yes, you can. So often we have groups of volunteers that are crowdfunding. You can have, personal causes, for example. Just the structure of your crowdfunder may well change. So if your crowdfunding is a personal cause, you're not going to have the ability to offer those rewards, for example, and you won't necessarily be eligible for extra funding. But yes, there's lots of different ways in which you can launch or set up a crowdfunder. You don't have to be a registered organisation. A lot of our volunteered organisations do crowdfund very successfully as well. You can be a community group that isn't registered, for example. But the platform itself does kind of walk you through all of that. Okay, we've got a few people saying goodbye, which is lovely. Thank you for joining us. Question from Wayne. Bear with me here. So can you point me towards any info on how to turn day-to-day services within a charity into projects for crowdfunding? We offer a number of regular services which we need funding for, but it can be difficult to translate these into projects as they are not one-off purchases or events. Well, the services themselves, the service that you offer, so the overall services that you offer, if you need to be able to financially support those, so if you need money to be able to make that sustainable, that is your project, essentially. So you are crowdfunding in order to deliver these wonderful services that you do. The other thing that you might want to consider that we touched upon is setting up a charity profile. So you could set up a charity profile, which is constantly on the charity side of the website. You could link up with Nectar Points if that's something that you have approval, that you receive approval for. You need to go through an application process for that. But then people could donate to your charity for all of those kind of day-to-day costs for the charity itself. But then you might actually want to run a fundraising event, or you might want to run a specific project for one of those or a group of those services, or for those services for a set amount of time, for example, and that could become a project that then is linked to your charity profile. So there's different ways of doing it, but I think if you are a registered charity, I would be recommending that you go down the charity profile route and then piggyback any projects or any fundraising activity off the back of that. I hope that helps for you. A few more goodbyes. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate I've run over. Apologies. Just quickly going through. Our charity has been approved. Oh, so we've done that one, sorry. Can you apply for crowdfunding if you aren't a red note? We've done that one from Annie as well. Wonderful. I think we've actually covered everybody's questions, which is brilliant news. So just ever so quickly, I appreciate a lot of you have got to head off. The next steps, and I'll put this in the follow-up email, is sign up to that Learn platform, work your way through those modules. It will put you in really good stead to then actually start planning your crowdfunder. Check out the extra funding page, see if there's anything that you are eligible for, that you fit the criteria, and explore other projects. As I showed you at the beginning of the session, make sure that you're looking at what's come before you and what's been successful, and see how you can kind of replicate, take inspiration, tweak, make it personal to your organisation or your project. And I wish you all the best with your crowdfunding journeys. We have many of these webinars throughout the year, monthly for this one, the sports specific one, as I mentioned, and those drop-ins. So please do come back and join us if you have any other questions. Good luck, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us today.